Hello everyone and welcome to altPOV.radio. Tonight is a very interesting guest we have tonight, and this is a great story. There's actually a couple of stories here that are very compelling. Sharon Clark is our guest, and she is a certified aromatherapist and energy light body worker and who lives in northern Arizona. She has been a UFO experiencer since she's been a child, and in fact by the age of 3, she was experiencing third eye or psychic visions. At the age of 7, she had a near-death experience that changed her perspective of what was real. And as a result of that, she began to ask questions far beyond her years of understanding. And she actually had a very interesting childhood with all this going on. On top of that, during the mid to late 1950s, she used to have visits, or the family would have visits from U.S. Air Force General Curtis LeMay. And basically, General Curtis LeMay would visit her parents' home on certain Sunday evenings from time to time to debrief. He was actually debriefing B-52 pilots returning home from tours of duty who had had UFO experiences. And the reason for this, and we'll get into this more when we we start our interview, but her father was an Air Force mechanic. Was supposedly an Air Force mechanic, but now obviously Sharon believes he was much more than an Air Force mechanic because obviously General LeMay was coming to their house. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But when she was 13 years old, she was sky watching with a local UFO group, and already at the age of 13, she was very into this and was asking questions that usually adults would ask. But she actually met the mysterious man known as Valiant Thor. Now, some of you may be familiar with Valiant or Val, also known as Val Thor, from either internet sources or the book Stranger at the Pentagon. Stranger at the Pentagon details the experiences of Frank Strange's. Now, according to a Harley Bird, who was a military intelligence officer who worked for the Division of the United States Air Force, Valiant Thor was perhaps the first documented landing of a human-type alien by military officials. And according to the story, in 1957, Valiant Thor allegedly met with President Eisenhower and Vice President Richard Nixon for about an hour, then was put on VIP status and shuttled back to the Pentagon. Now, Frank Stranges in his book claims that in 1959, he was escorted inside the Pentagon where he met a human-looking being from another planet. And he claims that the alien had no fingerprints, could read minds, and had was wearing a spacesuit that could not be cut or burned. Stranges also says that this space emissary, if you will, known as Valiant Thor, lived at the Pentagon for 3 years and interacted with our government's top leaders. Stranges claims to have had a lifelong friendship with Thor until Stranges' death. He died in 2008. So we're going to talk about that and talk about Sharon's experience with meeting Valiant Thor. And again, this is a fascinating story. And also, too, in 1994 in Washington State, Sharon had what she calls her first bilocation experience to a large ship or UFO. And she says that she was on board for 2 hours, fully conscious of being in both places at the same time. During this time, she was shown many things and telepathically given a symbol and told that when she sees the symbol in the future, the alien craft or ships are ready to show themselves will be ready to show themselves in public places. So there's a lot to talk about here and a lot of great stuff to talk about. Sharon, I want to welcome you to the show.
Hello. Welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you for being with us. And I also might add that this is the first time that really you're coming out with your story. You've obviously had these experiences, but and we really have to thank Paula Harris for you reached out to her, and then we know Paula very well, and that was the first time really that was your first outreach with telling someone about your experiences. So we want to thank you really for coming on the show and talking to us about this. It's very exciting.
Well, thank you very much. It's time. It's definitely time.
Good. And so I guess I think the best way to do this would be to start from the beginning. And what I mean by that is you, from a very early age, were experiencing things. You had told me that at the age of 3, you were already experiencing psi phenomena, psi ability, visions, if you will. Explain that a little bit for us.
Yes, when I was about 3, I was very aware of other worlds all around me, but, that's something you kind of don't talk about, and those are, imaginary friends to your parents. And so as the visions increased, the first one was under my grandmother's very large morning glory bush, where I'd go and sit every morning about 5:30, and because I just loved the vibration under there. At the time, I didn't know it was the vibration, but it was the vibration, the aroma, and the color of the flowers, because they were giant purple flowers. And I got a little bit afraid, and I ran back to the house, but I was so intrigued. Morning after morning, I would go out there and see if I could recreate this. And, of course, yes, as I got the fear left, which is the big stopper of growth, as the fear left, more and more they were willing to show themselves and do telepathic imprints. I would say I had my first 3D in real-time vision probably around 5, when it was probably kindergarten age. And I was so excited by what I saw. I ran and told my father, and he totally freaked out. So, and yeah, he did. He really freaked out, and he was very worried. And so I had a few more, and then I tried to tell them, and I could see that they were extremely upset. And I got some good punishments over that. And so I learned very early on, okay, this is not safe to talk about. We won't talk about this anymore. But always they were there. Always there were presences there.
How did were you scared at all at first, or were you comfortable with it?
Yes, sure. At first I was afraid, and I thought, oh, this is creepy. I shouldn't be here. Something's going on. And, of course, I would run back to the house like crazy. But I was just so intrigued. I just kept saying, okay, I'm going out today, and I'm going to sit there till it happens. And I just kept challenging myself to sit there till the beings appeared to me. So the first ones I saw were, I would say, of the fairy realms, because obviously that would not frighten a young child. And right. From that time on, I was hooked. I was absolutely hooked.
Wow.
And I'm an open conduit, I believe, to other veils, other realms.
Right. And, as if that wasn't enough, right, that you were already capable of being a conduit, at the age of 7, you had a near-death experience. And that even, yes, I guess, perpetuated this more. So tell us about that.
Well, it was a freak accident, and I had ruptured my liver from end to end all the way to the backbone. The surgeons gave my parents 1,001 odds that I would even come out of it. I was in and out a lot. I don't remember all of that, but when they did finally get me to surgery about midnight, I actually saw myself in the corner of the surgical room looking down at myself. And I wasn't afraid. I just thought, wow, look at that. And then from that point, obviously the ether took effect because they used ether in those days. I was taken to a realm that was full of gold beings, and they just looked like spun light. Now, as a little child of 7, I called them the pretty people because they were gorgeous. And I didn't realize that they were a higher celestial beings. They may have been ETs, I don't know that, but they're probably all one and the same. And I stayed there with them a very long time. And the feeling was overwhelming. They talk about that love that passes all understanding. It was definitely that feeling. It was very, very warm. I felt a magnetic around me, let's say, and I knew that I was lifted up. And so when it was time for me to go back, they definitely did give me a choice, and I begged and I pleaded with them, don't send me back. I don't want to go there. They're mean to me down there. I don't like the world. And, they do all their little trick questions like, well, won't your mom miss me? No, she won't. She has someone else. Oh, your dad be for no, they won't be worried either. And what tricked me was, what about your dog? I was like, the minute you stop to think, that was it. And I mean, I can still to this day remember how I was kicking and screaming and they were stuffing me back in the top of my head and an arm was coming out. No, don't send me back. I love it here. I don't want to go back. So that was my near-death experience. So when I came back and I came out of the surgery finally and came to, my grandmother was sitting at the foot of my bed. And she said, she begged and pleaded. She said, if you'll just stay here with us, I will do anything for you. Well, she was a fabulous seamstress. And I said, I want a gold robe like the pretty people. So I described everything that happened to me in the near-death experience. And being an old southern Louisiana woman, she said, don't ever tell anyone about this ever. They will take you away from us. Well, then that struck fear in my heart. So she finally made the gold robe. And I was so disappointed. Poor Granny. She must have thought I was the most ungraded. I said, but it's not right. The color's not right. The belt's not right. The collar is not right. It's not what I saw. So I was very adamant what I saw. And one other interesting thing, after I went back to school at the Catholic school, the Monsignor and I did not get along anymore.
Oh my goodness, that must have been tough. I mean, because of the culture back then, you know, no matter and at this, you're in Texas at this point, is that correct?
I'm in Texas, you bet. All
right,
yeah.
So Texas in the the 1950s, 40s, 50s, and so that's not exactly the. You know, even today there are tough environments for this kind of subject matter, and it's still tough. But back then, I can imagine you really did have to kind of keep it to yourself.
And I did challenge him in the confessional many times. I
really?
Can't tell you how many Hail Marys and Our Fathers I had to say to not talk about this, and how many times my mother was at the Catholic school, because I was like, that's not what I saw. They weren't angels. They didn't have wings. I know what I saw. So Monsignor Gary and I didn't get along too well from the age of 7 on.
You must have been the coolest little girl ever. That's all I have to say. I mean, that's pretty cool. Like, you could see a 7, 8-year-old girl. It's like, no, that's not it. That's not what it's all about. That's fascinating. So did that experience, it probably confirmed a lot of the things that you had already been experiencing. Did it give you even more psi ability, or did it confirmed?
I believe it did, but of course at the time I didn't know that until I got much older. You know, you get in your 30s and you look back and go, maybe they had a purpose for all of that. So I'm sure that some big piece of information was imparted to me. And several years ago, I worked with Dolores Cannon. I took her classes, and I actually went to Arkansas and had her regress me. And yes, that did come up, that they did. And the reason that they did this, according to my ET family, is I was saying too much. They didn't want to say all of the information I knew because it wasn't time for it to be out. So I thought that was really interesting. So they put a clamp on that kind of, because like, no, she's talking way too much. This is too much information for the public at this time.
Right.
One of the other interesting things is when I was probably maybe 6 going into 1st grade, a gray unmarked Air Force car was parked across the street and would follow me up the street to the school bus. And I noticed it right away, being extra aware, and I was like, that's not supposed to be there. So then I started running, I was like, oh God, now they're there again. And there was one at the end of the school bus, stopped when I got to school, and they followed me both ways. So a few weeks later, my dad said, Sherry, I want to tell you something, and I don't want you to be afraid, but there you might see, I said, oh, the gray car that's parked across the street with the 2 men and the white shirts and the black ties and the sunglasses. He said, you've seen them? Yeah, they're right over there. So he takes me out in the front yard, right? And he said, show me. I said, right there. He said, you're not supposed to see them. I said, well, they're there. So they followed me up the street to school.
Wow.
So this is another that led me to believe that, there's a little more going on than they're talking about.
A little more going on for sure. And I'm going to get to that little more going on in a little bit, but this all ties in because so now it's in the 50s. You're a kid, you're a little kid, and you're having these visits at your house, from an Air Force general, a famous one at that, Curtis LeMay. He's coming to your house, and he's coming with other, I guess, B-52 bomber pilots. Your father was obviously there. And they are sitting around a table, and they're talking about what? I mean, this is an incredible scenario for a little girl who has had these experiences, and now all of a sudden, tell people about what was going on.
Well, he would come to our house, and this was between, I'd say, 6 and 8 years old, all right? And he struck fear in everyone's heart. I loved the man. I'd crawl up on his lap. He'd bring me dolls. To me, he was just a great guy. He had a great laugh, but he struck fear in everybody's heart. Of course, he always had that big old cigar stuck in his mouth. And he would come on certain days. Obviously, I didn't know which days, under the cloak of darkness, because the house was abuzz. Okay, the sun's going down. He should be here, that kind of thing. So then he would show up in a gray unmarked car. And then one by one, the B-52 pilots that were willing to talk to him were debriefed at our kitchen table. Not all of them were come. One of them came once or twice and said, "No, I'm not coming. This will jeopardize my career," which it would have. He was a lieutenant colonel. And at that time, I'm pretty sure it was Anderson. He was up for promotion, and he knew that would end his career, and he had worked too hard. And Curtis LeMay was wonderful. He said, "There is no pressure here. If you feel that you are willing to share this information," and of course he was taking copious notes. And I wasn't supposed to be listening, obviously, but I did. I was supposed to be in bed, and I crept very quietly to the floor, and I laid down, and the big gap between the floors at those time, all wooden floors and real wooden doors, I put my ear and I listened to every sentence that these men would say. And I have to say, I respected those men always. I grew up with them. I was involved with their kids till I was probably about 10, 11, 12. And when I would see the fear on their faces and the tone in their voice, I knew this was very serious. These men were terribly perplexed by what they would see. And most of their reports were being tracked out the wing by UFOs that were tracking them. They'd fly side by side. They obviously go at 45-degree angles, descend down, and then come out in front of them. But never once was there challenged. They never felt truly in danger. But they were just totally mesmerized because this is out of their realm of possibilities at that time.
Well, it defied...
It defied everything in 1957,
okay.
56, 57.
And General LeMay was there to brief them, so if they were willing, he just took notes and wanted to know what they were experiencing, correct?
Yes, yeah, correct. And he asked a lot of questions, a lot of technical questions like how fast, how many degrees, things that a little kid doesn't remember. But he took the most documented notes, and then, of course, he just went away, and then we didn't see him for a long time. Then all of a sudden he was going to show up, and there he was, and we'd have more pilots there. Mm-hmm.
Wow. And what did your...
It was fascinating. I was so hooked by that time, and I knew what they were saying was true.
Right.
You can tell, being a very intuitive child, you can tell if somebody's genuine or they're making things, and they were not making this up. Just the look of fear on their faces alone, I was like, this is real.
Wow.
And it made me feel very secure because I had always known there was something else.
Wow. And was your father was there, and what was he doing when these meetings happened? Do you remember?
He was parts of the conversation. Mostly General LeMay did all the talking. And my dad was a brilliant man. He probably was a genius in electronics and engineering. And I believe he was there to try to make a physical and physics sense of what these men were seeing. That's my belief at this time. So, yes, he was there. Of course, I was not supposed to be listening. And the way I grew up during the Cold War, you didn't talk about things. You were, you almost grew up under paranoia, and you just didn't talk about things. So I never asked him when I was a child, ever. I knew better. Don't ask.
Right. Wow. That's incredible. And so now, and when you're 13 years old, are you still in Texas at this point?
Yes. I was born and raised.
So you join a local UFO group, and probably the youngest one in the group. But you had this intense interest in that subject matter because you knew you were intuitive. Tell us how this story goes down, because you're with the group and you're on some kind of a skywatch or something like that, and the leader of your group, of the UFO group, said that we were going to have a visitor, or go ahead, tell our listeners how that happened.
Okay, yeah, it was a club that my mom's company had, and I was the only adult, or the only child in all these adults, but I was always an adult way beyond my years. Most things on the planet bored me, even at that age. So they said, yes, you can come, you're adult. And so we did all the protocols. We followed everything they had to say. And it was very easy to see ships at that time because they were very close to the Earth. And I grew up where the 52nd SAC wing, the strategic SAC wing for the whole United States was. So we had a lot of activity. Plus we had the Nike Air Force Base, and they were testing the Nikes at that time out at White Sands. So it was so easy. You just go out in the desert and look. And, we were there several months, maybe up to a year. And then the leader of the group said, would you like to meet an extraterrestrial? And, of course, we all said yes. Why would we not? And I thought, sure, let's do it. So it was supposed to happen next month. It didn't happen. The next month I was like, yeah, how are they going to pull this off? This can't be real. So, I don't know, 3-4 months later down the road, we're out in the desert, and 2 unmarked cars with their lights pull in to where we were. And, of course, everything was a buzz because everyone was like, okay, stay here, don't say anything, because you could be arrested and taken away at that time. This was not allowed. And so the leader said, let me go down and find out who this is. So he came up with 2 gentlemen. The other 2 gentlemen in the car behind them did not get out. They stayed in their vehicle the whole time. And this was probably, let's say, 8 o'clock in the evening, because that's about the time it gets cool. And the interesting thing was these 2 gentlemen walked up. Now, the first man I saw was a short man with kind of a straw hat on with short sleeves, and I was like, okay, who's this? And then there was a very tall, slender man next to him. And immediately, in all my worldly wisdom of 13 years old, go, no way, this is a Hollywood actor, a New York salesman, because he was dressed impeccably. I mean impeccable. He had on a business suit from the 1940s, which right away said in 1960, 61, like, this isn't how people dress today. Leather shoes, a long-sleeve white shirt and a tie, and a felt hat, like a 1940s businessman hat. So I'm like, no, this is not for real. I'm just dismissing him. So he began to talk, and they were asking questions, and I said, I turned my back. I said, I'm not interested. I'm more interested in the ships. Now, at 13 or 14, I have no idea what I thought was piloting these ships, but I just wanted to look at the ships. So I kind of heard him over my shoulder. And I listened to him, and I was like, this guy's not for real. Come on. How do they pull this off? And I thought to myself, you guys are a bunch of sheep. You're going to believe this? Now, these are all adults that are all in data processing and brilliant people. And when Val started to speak, something in the tone of his voice, I just felt my body lift, and I turned my head to the left over my shoulder, and I immediately was just captivated by his voice. And he had the most beautiful voice I've ever heard to date on this planet. And he was very calm. There was so much knowledge that came out of this voice, so much consciousness and peacefulness. And the question that was posed to him by one of the members was, what are you going to do if Russia strikes us, bombs us? And he spoke to the whole group at this time, not very quietly through, I believe was Dr. Strange's, and he said, we will never allow this to happen. This won't happen. We are watching you very, very closely, and we will never allow a nuclear strike or bomb to hit Earth. And it was like a guarantee Now, I didn't even believe this person was for real, but all of my life, I totally remembered the whole sentence, how he looked, how he turned and walked away, and everything he said. And I always just on that inner knowing, I believed it. And I don't know why, because I don't believe he was real. So whenever life goes and I grew older and a lot of people come to me for counseling and questions and off and on, and you know, people get afraid, the fear throughout the ages of, you know, what are we going to do if? And I said, you know what? We've got to guarantee this is not going to happen. They'll never let it happen. And so part of me really believed in him, obviously. So he turned, and as he was turning, our eyes met for just a nanosecond. But the look I got from him, from his most magnificent eyes, he just kind of cocked his head and smiled a little bit, and he said, you don't even know who you are yet. And then they turned and they left. So I just never even gave it much thought, you know. And then I continued with the group till I got in high school, and then all the social things happened. But I always thought about him through all these years. Was he real? Was he not real? So then we jumped forward to December in, let's say, 2013. Yeah, it was just last year. And there were some pictures of Valiant Thor and this group that he was speaking to in the New Jersey woods. I about fell off my chair. All I could hear my brain was saying was, he was real. He was real. The minute I saw his face, it was the same man I saw in the desert. Same suit, same hair, same time, same shoes, same everything. So then I contacted my friend, and I said, where'd you get these? She said, I don't know. A friend sent it to me. And then she said, oh, but a friend sent it to her. So she said, I don't know how to contact them. So I did some back checking, and that's how I found Paola Harris. And I sent her a message. I said, you know, I just friended her, and I said, I met this man. I'm sure it's the same one. I'd love to talk to you. I didn't hear from her. And I thought, well, she probably gets a lot of crackpots. So I was like, I just kind of let it go, but I still just had this burning desire to know. And then at the equinox, my friends invited me to a dinner, and at the dinner was Regina Harris. She is involved with Gaian TV. I believe she's the producer or one of the directors. And I'd never met her before, and so we're sitting talking, and the dinner's cleared, and all of a sudden she talks about this movie she's working on. And I was talking to someone else on my side, and she mentioned his name, Valiant Thor, Stranger in the Pentagon. I snapped around and said, what did you say? Who did you say? And so, of course, the whole table got quiet, and she and I had a good 30-minute conversation, and she said, I have to film you for the TV. Will you do that? And I went, oh, sure. And how do I get a hold of Paola? She said, oh, she's my best friend. Let's go down the street, because cell phones don't work here between the mountains, and we'll call her right away. So that's how I actually got to Paola. Wow. And from there, it's history. And then Lori Wagner, who's wonderful, came to video me, and Craig Campbello is the director of the movie that'll be coming out soon, and he came to video me. So it's finally time. In all these years, this information's just been sitting there for the right time, as is life.
Well, years later, the confirmation of you actually seeing him again in the photo. How do you remember? And you might not remember, certainly being as young as you were, how your particular UFO group and your leader of that group was able to actually get Valiant Thor to come there, or was it a friend of his, or was it something to do with the military base, or?
I have no idea. I never knew how this man was in contact with Dr. Strange's. But what I think is, my judgment is that, you know, people talk and they want to know more, then they start searching. At those times, there were no cell phones or emails, so they probably wrote letters and read books. And I'm sure that's how they contacted. And obviously, this person must have had something going for him, because I don't know that Dr. Strange's would have just taken the chance to bring Valiant Thor out there.
So it was actually, I'm sorry, Sharon, I just wanted to confirm. Okay. So Frank Strange's was the man you saw in the, did you know him, or was that the man you saw in the short sleeve shirt?
Short sleeve, I did not know him at all. No, I had no idea who any of these people were, because at that age I wasn't interested who they were.
Right. But that was Dr. Strange's.
So I have no idea. I'm positive it was Dr. Strange's. And when Craig brought me the book, I said, did he ever have black hair? And he said, oh, yeah, when he was younger. Well, then they gifted me the book, Stranger in the Pentagon, because it's out of print. And in the back, there's a picture of him at that age. And as soon as I saw his curly, wavy hair and his stature and build, I was like, that was Dr. Strange's that brought Valiant Thor to the desert.
And
now,
it's
how
important.
that all happened and came about.
Well, one explanation could be because it was true that once Dr. Strange's met Valiant Thor in 1959, they became good friends. They became close, and Dr. Strange's was a facilitator for certain groups. So what he would do is he would do that. He wanted to get the word out that Valiant Thor was spreading. So Dr. Strange's would actually make the effort to go to different groups and to spread that message and I guess in your case to meet Valiant Thor. So from that standpoint, it makes a lot of sense that that's what have happened, and especially in 1960, 1961, because apparently Valiant Thor was at the Pentagon for 3 years, from 1957 to about 1960. But after that, he was on and off here on the planet, according to the way the story goes, and he would be in constant contact or fairly constant contact with Dr. Strange's, and they would do things like this. So it's very plausible that that's the situation that happened, that someone from your group knew Dr. Strange's or reached out to Dr. Strange's, and he said, well, you know what, we're going to come visit. And that was the message. So, and again, I'm speculating a little bit here, but the story, the way the story is told is that that's what they did. So it makes sense that that could have been very well what happened with your group.
I believe that's true today. After talking to Craig Campobello, he was actually friends with Dr. Strange's before he died, and Dr. Strange's wife lived here in northern Arizona, and she's still alive.
Oh,
so
wow.
I believe that's exactly what happened. At this point, I had no knowledge before, but I totally agree with you.
So looking back now, and so many people are going to there are a lot of people who would give anything to have had that experience. Some people would obviously be afraid to have that kind of experience, but is there anything about him? Obviously, and from the book and from what you're saying and everything, he was this very handsome guy, very clean cut, and he really did look like a 1950s movie star. Some have compared him to a singer from the 50s who used to, tour with Sinatra in Vegas. I mean, that he looked like he was very attractive. Is there anything? You mentioned a couple of little things. Is there anything that may have given him away as not human, as not from this planet, or was it basically just his tone of voice and it was really more what he was saying and how he was saying it?
It was more his affect. So I would say his energetic feel that was completely different. And the voice, and then the look in the eye. Now, it was dark, and I couldn't see under his brim very well. I couldn't tell you what color his eyes were, but I know that our eyes met, and there was such a sparkle and a smile in those eyes. It's just one of those all-knowing things that we come to grips with once we get older and have a few experiences. That's the thing that remained with me from all those years. And I'll never forget the voice, and I'll never forget the face, ever, ever. It's just such a beautiful face. It could have been angelic DNA. I mean, the face was impeccable.
Right.
He was quite tall, by the way. He was quite tall, by the way.
Oh, he was tall. Okay.
Oh, yeah, he was quite tall. He was well over 6 feet. My dad was 6 feet, and I would say he was at least 6'2", 6'3", somewhere around there. He was a very tall, thin man.
Okay. And I think a lot of times people, when they think of aliens, and the first thing that pops into their head is an alien gray or Some people think of reptilians, and certainly. But then you think of the tall whites, but of course they're really pale and they have the white hair, and there's different obviously species that people talk about. But there's also a lot. There's more than one story here where people talk about aliens or extraterrestrials that are so like us that it's really hard to distinguish them, and they could literally pass for human very, very easily.
That's my understanding. You would not know one if you passed them on the street. If you were intuitive and your third eye was open, you would know that the energy pattern was different, and you would go, yeah, not from here. But otherwise, you would never know. You would never know. The only thing I've noticed and I've read a lot is their eyes are just a little tiny set, a little wider apart than our eyes. But other than that, you would never know. Never know. And I've read a lot about hybrids. And, is it a possibility? Sure. We're probably all hybrids at one point. We all started in a petri dish somewhere. I know all the religious people will be down on that, but that's probably how we got here.
Well, I'm going to get. I'm going to ask you a question in a little bit that's going to delve right into that, and I think it's going to be very interesting. But it's a fascinating, and it's a fascinating, not only a fascinating story, but it's an important story because the Valiant Thor story is so, in many ways, so outrageous because it's like people think there's no way that could have happened, but there's evidence. I mean, there's certainly photographic evidence if you believe that those photographs are actually of Valiant Thor and some of his commanders and some of the people who were from his planet. But and certainly you have some very credible people like Dr. Strange's and some of the other people that came out and said this actually happened. But stories like yours validate that. The smaller stories, and I don't mean to say smaller is not as important, but smaller from the standpoint of a 15-minute meeting or an encounter in the desert or an encounter at a Skywatch group where Dr. Strange shows up with this man who is just mesmerizing in so many ways and has this incredible message. That's the kind of corroborative evidence that ties everything together, and that's why I think it's important that I commend you for coming out with your story, because these are the kinds of things that add up to more people opening their minds and saying, you know what, I'm not sure if I believe it, but it could really be true. And I think that's important.
I agree. And what are the chances that I would see this being in 1960-61 and recognize him the minute I saw a black and white photo of him? How impossible could that be?
Right.
And I have a very good memory for things like that, and I know without a doubt that's the man I saw. When I was gifted the book, there was one other picture in there, and when I showed it to Craig, I went, that's how his hair looked when I saw him. It wasn't as wavy. I am positive beyond belief this was the man. Was he there? I truly believe it was him at this point in time because I have nothing else to base it on.
Right.
Nothing else to base it on.
Oh, that's incredible. So now you've had this life full of some incredible experiences, and obviously you're extremely intuitive. So let's jump ahead to 1994 because you have an experience that up until this time you'd never had before, this particular kind of experience where you call it a bilocation encounter where you were actually taken to a ship, but done so, and this might take a little explaining for our listeners, but explain what that is and what that was like.
I call it a bilocation because it definitely wasn't, in my view, an abduction. There was nothing fearful about it, nothing harmful. And I was fully aware that I was seeing my body down on the ground in this folding chair at this concert, and it was pitch dark. But I was also fully aware that I was being taken up into this amazing ship, far into the sky. There was a few things that happened before that with the thunder and the lightning. And, you know, once I was up there, my conscious brain kept saying, you watch too much Star Trek. This cannot be happening. But I was fully aware of my thinking process. I really was. And while I was up there for 2 hours. And I knew that there was two beings standing on either side of me. I never physically saw them, and they mostly telepathically imprinted the information and what they were showing me. I never turned my head to see. I just knew that I was there and fully cognizant of what's going on. And they took me very quickly, and I was flying very quickly, and I thought, this is the most exhilarating thing I've ever felt. This is just amazing. And I finally said to myself, I'm in a ship. And they allowed me to turn around and look at the Earth. And I was completely puzzled at the gravity belt around Mother Earth. And I kept saying to them, this is all that's holding me on Earth? This tiny band, why can't I break through it? And I was just pressing them. This is so thin. How come I can't, pierce this? How come I can't do this by myself? And I was amazed that this gravity belt around the Earth is not very wide or thick. So we go up, and we're going at a very high rate at speed. And still I'm looking back at the ground on me, and I'm thinking, okay, I see myself there on the grass in this lawn chair, and here I am. Then they began to show me other ships in the sky. And there I kept saying, you watch too much Star Trek. This can't be for real. So my conscious brain was trying to say, nah, not happening. But my third eye and my pineal gland was saying, just be quiet and we're going to show you. So I was shown a lot of battles up there. I mean, incredible battles with incredible ships and lots of firepower. And we were standing in the bay of one large ship. And, other ships were limping in, and there was a lot of activity trying to get them repaired in and out again. And I kept saying, I've seen this in a movie. This can't be for real. Well, at a later date, I didn't understand. They were actually showing me what was actually going on today. And I did not realize until I connected with Dr. Greer that this planet is able to track them and pull them in and shoot them down. And I was shocked that it was real. They were showing me real time, but in '94 I didn't realize that. So the next thing they showed me was we went higher, and I felt really bad for the battles. And telepathically I kept saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know why the human species does this. And they said, there are a lot of great battles, and you need to be aware of this. So the next thing we go, and we're going at such an amazing rate of speed. And I'm standing there, and I'm very aware of these big oval windows in front of me. They weren't clear glass. I would say they were more of a light lime green tinted, but they were oval, beveled out. And there I'm standing with these two beings, and we come up very fast on this planet. And I thought, oh my gosh, are they showing me the new Earth? Because I had been reading a lot about the new Earth at that point. They're actually showing me the new Earth that's being prepared when the two Earths, this Earth splits and goes to her new dimension. And I was very excited. I was like a little kid at Christmas time, jumping up and down and going, it's like Earth, it's like Earth, it's beautiful, it's beautiful. So we got closer and closer, and we're coming out. I was like, oh, is this thing going to stop? This ship stopped without as much as a feather floats through the air, and they just hovered there and showed me. We went through this silvery mist that was cloaking this planet, and I was just in awe. It's like this great heart opening happened. I felt tears welling up because this place was absolutely pristine, and I kept thinking this must have been what Earth looked like when she was very young. The water was beautiful. The grass was gorgeous. The trees were amazing. And the thing that struck me is there were no conifer trees. Being an aromatherapist, I know a lot about trees and the oil and the essence that come from them. And the oldest thing on the planet is a conifer tree. They were the very first biological things, the biology. And there were no conifer trees at all. So that, for some reason, that was important that was imprinted. And there was just amazing deciduous trees. And the beings never really said why they were showing this to me. They never really said who they were. I never even thought to look right or left to see who the beings were. And it never even impressed me to say anything to them other to just listen to what they were showing me. So the time came after 2 hours, and there I was sitting back down on the lawn chair, and let me digress just a little bit. Just before they took me back, they showed me a symbol. And the symbol they impressed upon me was, when I saw this symbol in public places, and they said like television, movie theaters, or billboards, you will know that the time is near. They never informed me what that was about. I'm assuming that they will appear in mass numbers, which has, been foretold and everyone talks about, but they will be coming public. And when we see that, there will be no questions asked. No government, no religion can deny this. They will be here, and they will come in love and support and knowledge. We don't need to be afraid, and we don't need to have any arms. Besides, they will disarm in many ways.
Right.
I mean, they've got the knowledge. They just won't let it happen.
So when you did this all occur from what you could gather in our solar system, or did you go outside our solar system, or was this just all close to Earth?
Okay, at the very beginning, I believe we're in this solar system, okay? As the time progressed, I truly believe that this planet was outside our solar system, and it's cloaked in a silver mist for when the time is ready. And that's the impression that I got. I was so excited. I just thought, well, okay, I'm finally out of here. Well, 10 years later, no. 15 years later, I said, I'm still here. I guess the symbol hasn't shown up yet.
I want to get to this. So, and we'll get to the symbol in a second. And this happened in Washington State, correct?
Correct, Washington State.
Okay, so you're on a lawn chair now was it 2 hours Earth time, or was it really 2 hours? Were there people around you around the lawn chair, or were you alone?
No, I was in a concert, and it was a 2-hour concert outdoor at the Gorge at George, which is a very ancient place. I mean, mastodons roam through there, and at the bottom of this gorge, the Columbia River runs. And it was a full stage, and I was at a Yanni concert because I loved his music. Yeah. And my friend, who is now my husband, was next to me, and there was close to 1,000 people there. We just happened to get lucky and got seats on the lawn, so we were very close to the stage. And then that's when it happened. I'd say it happened within the first 30 minutes of the performance. And they just came and showed me some faces in the sky, and I was looking at the sky going, wow, those are really big faces, and those look like huge angels, like 5,000 miles across. And then from that point, I was up, and I was moving up, and I'm looking back at Earth going, the gravity belt's that thin? I need to get off of here. I've been trying for years. So that's exactly. And his concert was for 2 hours, exactly.
Okay, so just to confirm for the viewers, because they're going to be asking this question, so you weren't, and I have to ask this, but you weren't tripping on anything, drugs, during the concert. You were just at this concert, correct? Not that I'm suggesting you would do that. I'm just saying, like, people, she must have been on LSD. It's perfect. That sounds like, whatever. But so you were just at the concert. You weren't, right?
I was at the concert, and I had a bottle of lavender in one pocket and a small crystal somebody had given me in another pocket, and that's all I had. Could the wet grass and the electricity conducted something in the crystal? It possibly could, but it was one of those last-minute things. I went, I better go get that crystal just to put it in my pocket. Maybe the crystal had something to do with it. I don't know that. And I wasn't on anything.
I just have to confirm that, because what viewers, they're going to be like, well, wait a minute, that happened at Woodstock, and but that now, so if I guess to someone who, while you were having this experience, I wonder what you were like in the lawn chair. You were probably just zoning out, right? I mean, did anyone say you were acting weird, or were you just kind of there?
I was there, and I wasn't talking or communicating, but I knew that I was there.
Right.
And my husband now didn't believe in any of this stuff. No paranormal, no metaphysics, none of it. And at the break, he said, I don't know what's going on with you, but I'm scared, and I'm going to go to the concession and get a beer. Do you want one? I went, no. He said, well, come on and walk with me. I went, no, because I did not want to break this energy link for anything. And as soon as the stage started back up, which is very interesting, the second half was the stage was completely, now we're like 9 or 10 o'clock, and it's pitch dark. And the only thing on the stage was some white dots when they started up. And then a dig started, and that was it. Boy, it took me up and out and back on that ship in nothing flat. And Johnny had brought an Aboriginal from Australia who he just met by the byway, and this man played this dig. So, of course, it was all just extremely magical.
That's incredible.
So
Did you remember?
My husband was like, no, I don't know what's going on, but I am scared of this.
Did you remember any of the Yanni concert, or was that not? Did you remember the actual concert, or no?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, you did?
Said,
Okay.
I was fully conscious in both places.
Wow.
I knew when
Okay.
they set, I could look down on them, I could hear the music, but I also knew I was sitting in that lawn chair on the grass looking at the stage at the same time. It was the most amazing experience of my lifetime, other than seeing the gray whales birthing. But that is just an amazing thing to experience. And for years after that, I would bilocate and I'd go, uh-oh, don't do this. I'm on I-5. I can't be in the desert and exiting the freeway. And I said, okay, guys, if you want to play with me, we got to do it in a safe place. We can't do it at 65 on the freeway. So that started my bilocation experiences.
Okay.
And oh, my bad. Just as a, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I want to add just as a side note. I have never had anything but the most positive experiences. I have never experienced anything fearful, anything that looked like a gargoyle, or any dark energy ever in my life. I've never experienced that. So that's what's made me so many questions. When I read these things, I was like, how do these people get to these places? I've never had that ever in my life. I mean, we all go through bumps in our lives, ups and downs. I've never had an experience like that. So that's why I tend to believe, well, I guess my perception is just different than most people's.
And it's also your vibration, your energy. It's just a bright, it depends on, and it's also, I think, has to do with people's, where they're coming from in their lives at that point. And sometimes it could be negative, or there's just a negative connotation or a negative perception of what they're seeing, and that could be because of religion or other things that they're indoctrinated to think. So it's hard to be completely objective sometimes when it comes to this. But did the beings that took you during these things, were they familiar to you? Did you recognize, I know you didn't see them physically, but did it seem, or did it feel familiar to you, perhaps maybe from some of the things you experienced when you were a kid, that these might be the same beings?
No, I didn't feel that they were familiar. However, I was amazed at my comfort level with them. I was just completely comfortable with them. I never had, even a nano thought of, wow, what am I doing here? I never, it was so completely comfortable. And it gets into that all-knowing vibration that we can't explain with words, and it was just there. And I know that's not a good explanation, but that's the only one I have. It was just there.
Right. Do you remember the symbol?
Yes, I do remember the symbol. It's faded a little bit from my memory, and I'm going to work with somebody here in 2 weeks. It's going to regress me so I can get the exact measurements of it again. And I have a very good friend who's an amazing artist, and she's willing to put this in pastels for me.
Oh, wonderful.
And one other person on this whole planet has seen the same symbol, And it was through Dr. Greer that I found out. No one else in his knowledge has even seen the symbol. So I thought, okay, there's more credibility. Even my husband said, you can't make this stuff up. It has to be true. And I went, yeah, how can I make something like that up? And why would I, for one thing?
Right.
So that's how the symbol is.
So you were told, I mean, you weren't told not to share the symbol. It wasn't a question of you can't tell anyone about this symbol. It was just a symbol that was given to you.
Correct. No, they never gave me any instructions at all. They just said watch for it. And it will be in a lot of public places according to what they impressed on me. I mean, we'll see billboards driving on the freeway and people go, wow, that's an interesting symbol. I mean, right. Big black and white symbols, you know, and I thought, okay, I'll leave that one to you guys.
Right. Was it like hieroglyphics or was it like nothing you've ever seen?
Well, I would say that this is where my brain got tricky. I was like, I must have seen this on Star Trek. And I'll explain it the best I can, which isn't going to come close. But think of an inverted V. So think like the top of a pyramid. And then intersecting it at a 45-degree from the right is another V. So the 2 points don't touch. So they're, you know, let's say a few feet from each other. The symbol was quite large. And the ends don't exactly touch the ground, and they're a little bit squared off. And that's what I can't exactly remember how were the ends, but there was something really different about the ends. And it was just shown to me on a big white screen, let's say, and just two very black, bold symbols. So I called them intersecting inverted V's because that's what it looked like to me at that time.
Okay.
And that's incredible. Their symbol. That's their symbol for we're here. We're going to show you.
Considering everything that you've experienced in your lifetime, have you come to any conclusions as to why you might be having these experiences?
Well, what I truly believe, it's all about love. I think that's the highest vibration on the planet, and that's the only vibration there is in all the universes. And it has to be love, and it has to be a burning desire to know more and to elevate ourselves. And that's definitely a personal choice. And it takes work, and it takes time, studying, having experiences, talking to people who have had other experiences. Some of them resonate, and some of them don't. Some of them like, no, doesn't fit. It took me a very long time to get enough confidence to say, that doesn't fit with me, because obviously I was just a sponge. I wanted all the experiences. But as you get older, and there's a certain degree of maturity that says, no, that's not me. Have I always been different? Always. My mother used to say, you're such an odd child. I never knew what to do with you. That's why she parked me with the UFO group.
Right.
When I was very young, she took me to see Ruth Montgomery for a reading. And I was probably 14 or 15 years old. And out of all the people in the audience, she gave me a reading. And it kind of shook my mom up a little bit. But I knew exactly what she was talking about, except for one thing, which now this late in life makes perfect sense to me. But I've always wanted to be on the other side. Right. I don't know if that stuff with my near-death experience or not. I don't know that. I just knew that I just did not fit in down here. Now, of course, I know differently.
Right. And you have a purpose down here for certain. There's no question about that. You often read in UFO literature, and you hear these stories, and when you do some research, that often in military families that are stationed at certain bases, whether it's an Air Force base, naval base, what have you, that sometimes these things run in families. These experiences happen in these families. Whether it's you hear like the father or mother has a top secret clearance, and their child has been abducted, has had an alien abduction experience since they're a young child, or there's certain paranormal experiences that come with territory, and a lot of times they say certain people are chosen either for DNA or for their psi ability, and I see a lot of parallel stories, and certainly stemming from the fact from your father, from the fact that he was in the military, certainly the fact General Curtis LeMay was living room debriefing pilots about UFOs. I mean, that's heavy stuff. And I wonder if you ever thought about it. Does that resonate with you at all? Do you ever think, well, maybe it's just something that was meant to be because whether or not your father had top secret clearance, but the fact that it was a military family, you were around that all the time. Did that ever, and the fact that you never felt quite like you totally belonged here, have you ever thought about that maybe you're in some way, I don't want to say hybrid, but in some way your DNA is a little different, or something to do with that? Have you ever thought of that?
Yes, let me just clarify. That whole scenario you just went through was all garbled. I could understand it, but I don't know how they'll show up on your recording. So just to let you know, it was very garbled. And to answer your question, yes, I think about that every single day of my life. Why am I different? Why do I vibrate differently? Why is my third eye activated? Why was I given the gift to help people open that third eye so they can see a more positive vision? I took enough classes, I talked to enough people that I just came to grips with it. It was like, okay, this is really what I was supposed to do. I didn't have that. And let me clarify one other thing. My father was not in the Air Force. My dad was in the Marine Corps in World War II, but he was a civil servant at this base. And we were always told he was a jet mechanic. So this makes the story even more interesting and intriguing because a jet mechanic should have never known any of these people. He was considered a grease monkey for jet engines.
Wow.
So, yes, I do believe that. Yes, the other thing is I do believe that my DNA is different in some way. When I did my past life regression with Dolores Cannon, it was very interesting because what I thought I was going to talk about didn't happen, and my higher self launched into all the different codes and color tones of DNA, which I know absolutely nothing about. So there is something with the light code messages. I've read enough and studied enough to know that the light codes come through your parents. I do believe it was my father because he was highly involved with UFOs. He was a genius far beyond his years. I'll give you one little hint. When, I must have been about 8, he developed the brakes that stops the jet engines today in my mother's Dutch oven out of plaster of Paris, piece by piece by piece. So we're talking 1956-ish, let's say, 54. So it might have been 1955. And I got to help him take pictures of all these parts on our huge Duncan 5 table. My dad was brilliant at everything. He had his own cameras. He had his own developing that was no longer our laundry room. And my dad could figure out anything. He could back engineer anything. After talking to Lori, she led me to believe that he probably was called to crash sites as a back engineer. I have no way of knowing that. He never, ever would speak of any of this. When I would ask him when I was older, he'd just give me that grin and go, "Oh, you're pretty sharp." Going, "Oh, I'm 40 and I'm just now asking." No, I'm not that sharp. So I do believe that. That's my personal belief that certain light codes and strands of light knowledge come through certain family members, and they're carried on through many universes for billions and billions, zillions of years, because that's our purpose.
Right.
Our purpose is to be aware, raise the consciousness.
Right. And but it's funny how your father he would never tell you. He would give you looks, but he'd never come out and say exactly.
Never. He only just used to laugh at me and go, "Oh, you're pretty sharp, aren't you?" And that was the only confirmation that I would ever have gotten from my daughter. My dad said, "Okay, yeah, you're on to something there," that he knew about, but he would never say, ever. Never. You didn't bring those subjects up to him because, you have that code of silence from the 40s and the 50s. You just don't talk.
Oh, yeah.
You don't say this. And his firm belief was, if you talk, it's dangerous.
Right.
That's the paranoia. I don't believe that. I believe if we talk more, we have more knowledge, and sooner or later, as we can see with social media, people all over the world are going to start asking questions, which is what we need to do.
Right. But
we can't be brainwashed any longer. We just can't be.
Right. But back then it was a much different mentality.
Oh, completely. It was the Cold War. You just didn't speak up.
Right. And just to reiterate, because we may have had some technical difficulties with the audio when I was asking the question, I had asked Sharon, just based on the fact that it was a military family, and her father obviously having, you know, General Curtis LeMay come over and debrief pilots on UFO experiences, and that, you know, you often read in UFO literature about how sometimes in military families these things happen, alien abductions, and it's a generational thing. And a lot of times people have these experiences within these families either because of their DNA or their psi ability. And then I was just asking Sharon, have you ever thought of that? Because obviously a lot of this, there's a lot of parallels with your stories to some of the other stories from military families and people who are in the military who have had UFO experiences. So again, just in case there were some technical difficulties there, I just wanted to re-ask the question so people would know what Sharon was responding to. Sharon, you know, again, based on all of your experiences, based on what Valiant Thor said that night to you, to your group, and I think you kind of intimated this earlier in the conversation about love, but what do you think the overall message is regarding these phenomena?
Raise our consciousness, and don't buy the programming. Just don't buy the programming of the greed and the wars and the cruelty and the victimization, because it's not real. I truly believe that only higher beings are able to go into these realms, and it takes a lot of thought process to get through this information, because it's not what we're taught. And it's up to each one of us to do our own searching for our own knowledge, and that, I think that's what the message is. And once you reach a certain level, then the doors start to open, then more questions are answered, then more questions are posed to you. And my personal belief is you just keep growing. There's no shortcuts. I've told many people that I've worked on, there are no shortcuts. You must do the work yourself. If you're willing to do the work, the payoff is there. And that's just my personal belief.
No, that's great. And do you think Valiant Thor's message is one that we should really focus on? I think, you know, do you think he had it right?
Absolutely, he had it right. I understand that he's still here. I understand that he is aboard his ship, and that the message is the same. Love one another. I recently read a book that Paula suggested, and it's the name of it's Space Brothers Here to Help. And it's the Italian perspective of all their encounters with a family called the Consciousness Family. And the encounters were beautiful. They're nothing like what they write in the United States. And basically the title says, live as one or perish. How many times has this planet had to start over? So I would say yes to that question.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Many of the stories we've talked about tonight are fascinating. And the Valiant Thor, I'm hoping that the movie enlightens people, it turns people onto the actual story, and kind of raises awareness to that. Tell our listeners what you're doing these days, and the kinds of things that you are doing and want to be doing moving forward.
Well, right now I'm focused on marketing and helping this conference, Starworks USA, November 14, 15, and 16 in Laughlin, Nevada. Get off the ground. It's going to be at the Aquarius Hotel. And for the first time ever, Craig Campobello is going to release the trailer to the movie Stranger in the Pentagon at this conference. So I urge everyone to sign up and go to it. Laughlin's gorgeous at that time of year. There's not a lot of heat. It's right by a big river. There's a lot of fun. If you like to gamble, it's in a casino. And the conference, what struck me about the conference, why I really got involved, is it's one of the first times that paranormal, ufology, spiritual awareness, and consciousness have joined together for a positive message. That's what really spurred my interest, because it's time to get the conscious positive message out. And I'm not negating anybody's experiences, but it's so time to get into this positive realm to bring about this earth that we all keep talking about. Metaphysics is real. Paranormal is real. And UFOs and space brothers and sisters are real. And it's time our species recognizes that and go forward. We need to go forward. We really do. So that's why I'm involved with that. Just the normal stuff of being retired, which I absolutely enjoy. I see clients on a, let's say, private referral basis. I don't do this all the time anymore. I'm going to be having a workshop in Colorado with advanced massage therapists and advanced craniosacral workers to show them how to get these continual blocks in the body off of the same clients that keep appearing with the same thing. They just keep, appearing with the same disability or same blockages. And how to actually help them open their third eye and clear the blockages for the cerebral spinal fluid that is pumped up from the, the sacrum up to the top of the brain and around. These is where our messages come from. This holds the DNA. That fluid is a liquid crystalline. So there's a process that I've learned to do over the many years with all my different classes and my natural abilities. Plus there are high-grade essential oils that I use to enhance that, break energy blocks, open the third eye, stimulate the pineal gland. So you can do your own work because everyone has an inner vision. And that's my purpose, to get that inner vision out so we can manifest what our inner vision is and how we raise the consciousness of everybody on this planet. You know, the Aboriginals say no one goes till we all go. Well, if that's true, we got a long haul ahead of us. So it's just my way of trying to help certain people get to the root and the core issues of people, clearing their psyche, clearing their auric field. In the auric body, we're like a layer, let's say, like the onion, like Shrek said. And when it's time for the old debris to come to the top, there's a certain way to dispel that. Well, if it just stays there and collects, how can your new information and new vibrations come to the forefront? So it's kind of the megahertz and how your energy field looks. And once you get that cleared, then you're really off and running. And so that's my passion. My passion is to help everyone on this planet. We're all one. We've always been all one. We've gotten misinformation, which I suppose served its purpose. What else could it have been here? And you just make a choice. I'm not going to play this. I'm not going to be in that paradigm. I'm outside the matrix. I'm not going to play that anymore. So it's just been a choice, but it's been a long haul. You have to learn to have confidence in yourself. And when you're continually told from a young age, don't talk about that, you're weird, you're strange, it takes a long time to get over that stuff. But finally you get to an age where it's like, I really don't care, I'm going to be me. So once you start to be me, you're in good shape.
Oh, we appreciate the fact that you're coming forward and talking about your stories. And do you have a time, a day and a time for the workshop yet, or is that coming?
That's coming. I don't know that. All I know it's going to be in Colorado Springs, and one of my dear friends who was actually at my house when I had the last visit from the UFO, who had never seen one ever, was like, oh my God, is that a ship? I went, yep, that's a big ship. She's going to be promoting this in her new business in the Colorado Springs area, but I don't have a date yet.
Okay. Well, when you get the date, give it to us, and we'll be happy to share it on our site as well.
Great.
And we also will be promoting the Starworks conference in Laughlin. Paula is working really hard to get that. You know, this is the first time it's going to be back in Laughlin in a couple of years, and Laughlin's always been a wonderful place for the UFO conferences. So we want to support that as well. But Sharon, thank you. I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your stories. They're fascinating, and again, I want to just commend you for coming forward with this stuff. And when you do get the symbol illustrated and drawn up, we'd love to share that as well, if it's something that is supposed to be shared. And you're comfortable with that, we can delve further into that, and we'd also love to have you back on the show to talk about some of the updated stuff that's going on, because I know you still living in Cottonwood, which is close to Sedona. You still see a lot of craft in the sky, so there's always a lot of stuff going on out there.
Yes, we're a very active area. Sedona's always been active, but now that I'm back in Cottonwood, they've just been coming so close. I mean, the one we saw in April was probably only 300 to 500 feet off the ground. It was that close. And we both sat there for 45 minutes going, is it real? Oh, yeah, it's real. So, of course, then we ask it, power up, and it does, and then it moves closer, and I was like, okay, it's real. We're not imagining this. So it was a great experience for my friend who'd never actually seen one up close and personal, let's say. And,
right.
I want to think it's be my great honor to continue, and I'm just so honored that you would hear my story. And like I said, this is the first time I've ever spoken publicly about my story. And so if everybody wants to know any more about it, come to the conference where you can see the movie. And also, and I'm sure you know this, they can go to www.starworksusa.com, and it'll take you right to the site. And then at the far right-hand corner, there's a little tiny clip of Craig talking about, I think like maybe a minute or two of the actual footage from 1958, I believe.
Oh wow! And I did communicate with him as well, and he is definitely going to come on the show as well. He's obviously really busy getting things ready for this, so it's probably going to be in a month or two once he's not quite as busy with this. But we'll look forward to also having him on. But again, Sharon, thank you. It was really a pleasure speaking with you, and good luck with everything that you're doing. And we'll look forward to being in touch with you again soon. Take care.